Welcome to the Mindful Healers podcast with
Dr. Jessie Mahoney
and Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang.
We are here to help you learn to pause and be present, awaken your breath, and harness the ripple effects of mindfulness for radiant health.
We get you. We know you. We are you.
We have both been successful on the surface, yet struggling underneath. We have both had cluttered brains, been overwhelmed, and exhausted.
We're healers who have found solutions and want to share them with you.
Join us here to discover a better way.
Welcome to our episode on complicated dynamics, tools to navigate holidays and families. A reminder that our podcast is not medical advice.
The intention of today's episode is to acknowledge that holidays, especially when spent with teens, young adults, first grandchildren, newly blended families from different cultures, perhaps aging adults, or whoever is in your life, they are the epitome of complicated dynamics.
You'll discover that it's quite normal to have complicated dynamics and that the language used to describe those interactions is an amazing tool.
Takeaways of today's episode are that desiring things, holidays, family time, to feel like they used to is common, and that it is common and normal and expected to experience a wealth of other human emotions during holidays, both good, what we would describe as good, and bad. All emotions are welcome and expected. Complicated dynamics. Full disclosure at the beginning, I received an email that was entitled this. I don't even remember who it came from. I was sitting in the car driving home from my week of family complicated dynamics, and I saw this title and I said, I just had this moment of relief and understanding about the whole week that I had just experienced. And what came to mind at the beginning was literally that complicated dynamics is this beautiful, apt, kind, and neutral way to describe all the things I had just experienced, which were all of those emotions that are good, described as good and bad. So love, hope, good intentions, confusion, disappointment, pride, grief, and that these are all expected to accompany family gatherings.
You know, in reflecting about that, those two words, complicated dynamics, really does cover the spectrum of human emotions.
They're complicated. I have to add with Loving Amusement that Facebook has a relationship status it's complicated. And that strikes me as, it's supposed to be a, dating relationship, or you haven't committed, or who knows. But I think all relationships have complicated dynamics. And then when you put together many different relationships, so parent-child relationships, grandchildren relationships, new in-law relationships, aging parent relationships, changing relationships, and marriage, love, other relationships, then it really gets complicated.
Especially if they're happening like all at the same time, which occurs in family gatherings and especially around the holidays, perhaps.
And because we are recording this around the holidays, I think holidays are also in and of themselves a complicated dynamic. Everyone celebrates them differently. They have so many expectations of both. I've seen a lot of conversation recently around the magic that's supposed to be there for your children, and a judgment about whether you have enough time to make it happen and whether you succeeded. And for people who are people pleasers, gifting is a challenge. And there's just so many complicated dynamics in holidays in and of themselves and families in and of themselves. And then putting the two of those together, the word that comes to mind is a perfect storm. And I'm going to tell you that is a terrible word choice. And so clearly that's one that takes some rethinking. And I am guilty of having said those words. And I'm like, wow, when I say that does not connect me with hope and inspiration and calm and ease. So this word complicated dynamics does, I think. It gives me an acceptance and a calm. I actually have a client who came up with this word, it's two words, but it feels like one word, of graceful calm. And that strikes me as what's needed. Buoyancy is one that I often use as needed in situations like this too.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah.
I wanted to highlight, though, before we delve into what inspired this podcast as well, that you're highlighting and I'm re-emphasizing that we ourselves, so you, dear podcast listener, might have complicated dynamics with the holidays themselves, like aside from all of the people. So just to like highlight that and normalize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, to highlight that the words can change our experience of whatever we're experiencing. And so while we may not have control over the people in our lives and the relationships and how they show up, we do have control over the way in which we describe them and the way in which we choose to experience what everybody else does.
So with that, Jesse, please share with us what inspired this episode, because it really hit a very resonant chord with many people, I think unexpectedly.
Yeah. So what inspired this episode is I saw that email, and all of a sudden I'm in the car driving up the I-5 after my week, and I wrote this not short blog post about all the feelings that I had, because I had been sitting there just feeling a little on edge and uneasy, and I couldn't figure out why, and I couldn't explain it. And so I am someone who's done enough mindfulness that I'm very in tune with this feeling, but I didn't have a word to describe it. And I didn't understand where it came from or why. And so when I saw these words, complicated dynamics, I wrote this piece, which I'm going to read here, and then we'll talk about different pieces of it and what resonated with others and what it brought up for you and why it led to this podcast. Holidays, especially when spent with young adults, first grandchildren, and newly blended families from different cultures, are the epitome of complicated dynamics. Complicated dynamics is a beautiful, apt, kind, and neutral description of the blend of love, hope, good intentions, confusion, disappointment, pride, grief, and more love that accompanies these gatherings. A wealth of varied emotions always accompanies new phases. Holidays add to that. Our time together is short. Everyone wants it to feel like it used to when it felt good, and it is never exactly what they or you hope it would be. It's wonderful and complicated all at the same time. Everyone is used to their own lives and their way of moving through the world. They have expectations of brothers, moms, dads, and grandparents. The other people don't know what those expectations of them are. Those with the expectations may not even know what their own expectations are. The others likely aren't and or cannot be that person anymore. New grandparents remember being the young adults and new parents with their lofty goals and dreams. After living and hard-earned wisdom, their goals and dreams look very different now. The young adults and new parents are figuring out how to navigate their new roles. Everyone wants to be together, to laugh, and to feel comfortable, like it used to. They long for that feeling of relaxed and present togetherness. But it is strangely elusive, and then it's not. The dynamics are complicated. There is tension and discomfort hiding around every corner. Everyone has different wishes, desires, and comfort zones now. And then, of course, at the end, everyone feels a twinge or more of sadness, wishing for more time together, while simultaneously looking forward to returning to the simplicity of their own life. Maybe every other family has it figured out. Or maybe they are just in one of those magic flow moments, the ones that float in and out, not infrequently when you are present enough to feel them. More than likely, they too are experiencing complicated dynamics. Sending love and a hand to heart to all humans and families everywhere. Being human and loving other humans of different ages and generations is always a complicated dynamic. Well, as I read it, I see why it resonated. Like, it's very thoughtful, and it's a description of all those complexities. What came up for you when you listened to it again?
Just the highlighting of the intergenerational differences and the complicated dynamics that I'm experiencing in my family now as the kids are getting older, my parents are getting older, and their relationship is definitely changing. And also that's affecting like my relationship also with my parents and my kids. And there is some aspect of nostalgia and grief that's been thrown in there. And yet at the same time, I'm concurrently noticing growth and a togetherness or intimacy of like my immediate nuclear family of me, my husband, and my kids.
It reminds me a bit of seasons. We were just talking about the season of winter, and I'm heading off to a Sagrada retreat in winter, which I've never done before, in the holiday season and the shortest time of the year. And I think if I think about my family life as sort of a series of seasons, I had a seasons of little kids, I've had seasons with different numbers of children. I'm about to enter a new season of becoming an empty nester next year. And so there is that nostalgia and grief. And as you mentioned that, I even went back to like, I have a little nostalgia for my own like Christmases as a child. And I remember people gathering and the way that my family did Thanksgiving. And so I think that's actually something I didn't even reflect on in the piece, is bringing that piece of your own childhood to it, because I bet, I'm certain as I say this, that I have some grief about that. And, you know, whether they were short, they were probably not even, you know, so much of it is about its stories we tell, but my memories of it and the stories I tell of it were these magical moments that for me won't happen in the same way again, because I don't have the mind of an 8-year-old anymore. And that's just part of being human, you know, that magic of seeing something for the first time or experiencing, believing in something in such a deep and exciting, believing in magic, really. It's very interesting. The other thing that came up for me when I read it out loud, and I have never read it out loud, was just this tremendous like release of kind of tenderness and compassion. Or I knew who I was writing about it, and I knew the moments where I felt certain things like that. But also for me, tenderness and compassion, especially for my parents who actually weren't a part of it because they're not at a point in a health spot where they can travel or be with all of us. And I felt just tremendous, rather than frustration, just tremendous and like compassion for everyone and our human condition and the seasons of life, and a wish that we could all enjoy whatever season we're in. And I think that was the first thing I wanted to bring up in our conversation specifically that I had thought about before, is that I received several different comments, emails, etc., about this concept of wanting things to feel like it used to. And our brains are always thinking that there's a there, or it used to be better, or I want to go back to when it was simple. And someone actually wrote to me that maybe it wasn't ever simple. Maybe we just thought it was simple. Maybe it just felt simple. And what we're really looking for is those little pockets of moments that feel, I think the word is peaceful. I'm not exactly sure. Feel peaceful, complete. They're clearly moments of presence. And perhaps the invitation here is to stop thinking about what it used to be and be present. And maybe that's the way to get back to that feeling. And this longing for things to feel the way they used to, even though we don't really know what that is maybe what keeps us out of the feelings that we're really looking for.
In order to create new memories and be open to the new opportunities for that feeling that you're describing, that presence and that contentment, which can be really fleeting during the holidays, albeit like for many of us still present, we have to be present in order to create new memories.
Yeah. The other thing that I really loved about this concept of everyone wanting it to feel like it used to is that it reminds me of this sort of concept I use in relationship coaching about how we are just like other people. And so even though I noticed this very big difference between myself and the 3 different phases that my children were in, and I have a whole new, very large extended in-law family, and that I do firmly believe that we were all wanting the same thing, which was connection, love, and peace. And that It's not that no one knew how to find it, but when it's unfamiliar and it's all brand new, of course you don't feel that way. But when you connect to the idea that that's what we all wanted, and maybe we would use a different word for it, but we all know that emotion, that is very connecting and brings peace. And you feel so much closer to that emotion just by connecting with how we want the same thing.
And so that brings up the powerful notion of common humanity as one very key ingredient in self-compassion work as well.
Love that. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that I had actually done a fair bit of preparation for this week beforehand. And I had met with my coach, not specifically about this, but it turned out to be what I wanted to really, it felt so important to me to gather all my people from afar. And it's very not frequent in my world today, given where all of my children are in their life and what's happening. So it felt very important to me. And I wanted to go in with an intention. And I had also been coaching quite a few of my own clients on the upcoming holidays and worries about things and how to approach them. And so I had done work on how I wanted to show up and the intention I wanted to bring and what my purpose was, which was really connection and reconnection and love and moments of joy and really being present. So I was really surprised when on the car ride home, I had this like just sort of overwhelming emotional moment. And I will say, actually, my husband at one point, I was almost in tears, or I probably like on the, like, and he was like, what is going on? Like, it just like, so I was very much surprised by it because I thought I had prepared for it. Mm-hmm. And what I realize now is that I think when you allow yourself to feel, you can't prepare for it. It just comes. And there were moments along the way where I also, the emotions just come. And that is also part of humanity. And as I reflect now, this is probably exactly a week later, it probably was a beautiful, amazing thing. I was like, a little cry is good. Like I have moved totally on. I'm on from it and I'm excited for the next time we gather. So it was my sort of human form of processing and being human. And yet I was quite surprised. And I'm giggling with loving amusement that I was surprised. And yet, of course, I was surprised because we don't know exactly what's coming and what's not coming.
Yeah, so speaking of what's coming and what's not coming, I'm finding myself in the season where I'm needed to be very committed to setting boundaries for the sake of the well-being of my nuclear family. And so there was a time when, quote unquote, everyone got along in the extended family, when there wasn't as much tension or resentment or misunderstandings. But honestly, this whole process of navigating the complicated dynamics intergenerationally for me has been a reminder that the only constant in life is change, especially when kids are involved. And frankly, especially when other humans are involved. When kids are involved, though, their emotional and their physical growth really is ever changing, sometimes day to day, moment to moment. And this is expected, especially for teens.
I just want to interrupt you and say, I don't think it's just for kids. That I'm in the season of my parents experiencing all of this change. Mm-hmm. And my kids are not kids anymore. They're all above 18. So technically they're not kids anymore. And they're all changing. And I'm thinking like when I was a young mom, not a young mom, but a mom of young children, that was also like, I have changed now that I am a young mom of older, young adults, old children. I don't know what you want to call them. So that everybody, like, I think we resist this natural time course. And as a pediatrician, I always think it's funny because everyone's fine with change in children. And then we somehow think it's going to stop. That's what I'm getting at.
The milestones, right? Like we hang our hat so much on these milestones of change in our kids. Yeah. And just a reminder that like change is the constant.
I think though, what you're getting at, which feels really important to connect with, is that almost everyone can connect easily with this idea of change in kids. And so that we can use that as a way to help us understand change in everyone, but that's what we notice. And maybe even other people can appreciate other family members who may be struggling with change kids change. And so we're all okay with that as a
Yeah, a way to frame the normalization of change,
Yeah.
regardless of our age
Yeah.
and our relationships with other human beings. So, and this change, right? Like witnessing the change, going through the change yourself, getting hurt sometimes by the change. It's really hard sometimes. And some of that can come out a lot more during the holidays because of all of the things that you just mentioned before, the layers of complexity between us and the holiday, but then also us with other human beings that are going through that particular holiday. So I am sharing this out of the recognition that all of this is happening, though, in the sphere of unconditional love. And I finally have come to the loving acceptance that things will never be the same. And while it's a little sad, it's definitely a reflection also of the growth that I had mentioned. So this duality of like having something that's sad, but at the same time holding concurrently a growth, there's a positive in this too. And all of this is enveloped in loving unconditionally these humans that are in my life and related to me.
I'm giggling a little bit because when you said that idea of like change, imagine, as I'm going to be an empty nester, imagine if my kids were forever toddlers and young school age without change. Like I would be exhausted, right? Or I often, as a pediatrician, talk to parents who are struggling with sleep or like their children who want to sleep with them or who want to ask why all the time. And I'm like, they never go to college continuing to ask why. So imagine if we never changed, right? It's actually a beautiful thing. And yet what I think this complicated dynamics and holidays bring up is we still have resistance to it, like because change is new and it's uncomfortable. And we've talked a lot in this podcast about when things are new or unfamiliar, our brain goes to they're bad or they're wrong, as opposed to just realizing that the discomfort is literally because they're unfamiliar.
And that's where the mindfulness piece comes in, right? When we recognize when we are grasping for the positive and when we are trying to push away what we perceive as the negative. Like the mindfulness allows us to have the palms wide open, to be open for whatever arises.
Yeah. And so I think this idea that of expecting complicated is also really helpful. And I think that we're going to talk a bit about expectations here. And in one way, expectations get us into trouble. In another way, if we can expect complicated emotions and expect change, that can actually ease our journey through them. And so I think for me, expecting it to be complicated and expecting that everyone's going to come in with different views on things. And everyone, when you have young adults in particular, everyone's coming from a totally different life and space that I actually probably don't know much about, right? One of my sons has a partner and a new baby. The other one lives 3,000 miles away and works in a startup and lives in New York City with a bunch of friends. And like, so when we all come together, one does live with me, but when we all come together, like, I don't know where they're coming from. I don't know how tired they are. I don't know what else is going on in their life, even as their mother. I do know some, but I don't really know. And so I think to expect that I would is not reasonable. And to think that I know what their expectations are is not reasonable. And I think I do know enough to ask what they really want out of it, you know, and to know that we all have expectations underneath, that they're coming with expectations. I'm coming with expectations. We have manuals for what moms and dads and grandparents and sons, and even thinking about my youngest son, I know he has expectations about what should happen when his brothers get together. And like everybody, and they have expectations of what their younger siblings should show up like. And so I think just realizing that these expectations are complex and appreciating that we have expectations, not resisting them. And we're going to talk a little bit about dropping expectations. All that's really in our control is our own expectations. But I think we can't really expect or ask other people to drop their expectations unless they want to, and unless they have done enough mindfulness work to even know what they are. I think a lot of people aren't even mindful enough to know what their expectations are. And I think that's oftentimes where these complicated dynamics get even more complicated. And then that some of us are holding on to expectations like, I don't even know what my youngest son's expectations are, but I did wonder at some point during the week, if I was the youngest, I'm the middle. And all of my older siblings had moved out of the house and were on to other lives. And then we came back together. I would still want them to be the brothers who did the things, and because that's just your experience. And I wondered, I did find myself several times during the week curious about his experience. And he keeps it all close in, so I won't get to know for years. But someday I would love to know what that experience was. And I know how I might have interpreted it. And so I think it's valuable just to pause.
Expectations that fill up manuals are so heavy. And then you also have perhaps a manual for yourself too. And so it's a lot of weight. And it can wear you down, and it can be so tiring to hold on to. So our invitation is to put down the heavy pieces of manual, of luggage that you tote around, even sometimes unconsciously. They don't have to go anywhere, right? Like, you don't have to resist them, as you mentioned. You don't have to like make them burn and incinerate or something. Because honestly, those manuals have developed because of some probably really precious memories too. So you don't want to completely obliviate them, but you can choose to set them down, and you can set them down temporarily. And setting them down can create more freedom, more space for what is to be, especially for this season.
I also think many of us have manuals for holidays and how they're supposed to be. And we come in, not only manuals for other people, but manuals for holidays and manuals for ourselves. That's a lot of manuals. That's why it's complicated. And
really heavy.
Yeah. One thought also comes to mind when I work with people on manuals. The key thing is to notice what your manual is, because it's there either way. And once you notice it, you can decide with compassion what you want to do with it, what's helpful, what's heavy, what's not heavy. And then you can sort of set your intention for what is it you want to keep that can be the part of your manual. Because sometimes we actually do, you mentioned boundaries, right? Sometimes we need boundaries. And so letting go of all expectations might leave you feeling a little naked. And so I do think deciding, that's where I love this idea of the pre-work that I did. And it served me well. It just, I was surprised it didn't take care of all of it. And that it actually, you just go back to a lot of our default thought manuals as high achievers and moms. I thought I had taken care of it. Like I did my pre-work, it would, and yet that's never how it works. And so I have a lot of loving amusement for myself. The last thing I just wanted to highlight that keeps coming up throughout this whole podcast before we get to our reflection questions is self-compassion and loving kindness and unconditional love. And all of those three are very difficult for most of us. They are a work in progress, and they are a practice. And so connecting with what they are, where you are on that continuum of compassion and kindness. Are you at neutral? Are you accepting? Are you able to be kind to yourself? Are you still working on not being mean to yourself? How, I think for each of us, exploring self-compassion is a very personal journey. We've shared a number of people's approaches to self-compassion on this podcast. And there is a podcast with Kristen Neff talking about her approach to self-compassion, and Shauna Shapiro and your other mentor.
And Steve Hickman.
I was like, it's self-compassion for dummies. And so we've had all those guests to talk about it. And part of the reason we keep talking about it is it's a constant work in progress for most people. And there are many different ways to dip a toe in, or the cracks that let the light in. And yet it strikes me after this whole exploration of complicated dynamics that imagine if we all showed up with a bit more self-compassion and a bit more unconditional love and loving kindness and hands wide open, open-heartedness.
So here we go with our reflection questions, dear listener. Reflecting on past holidays and some of the more recent ones, what's different?
Where do complicated dynamics exist?
What thoughts, emotions are arising for you?
How might you show some self-kindness for any grief or resistance in accepting what is?
And what are some of the positives in the current complicated dynamics?
And if you want to explore coaching around family complicated dynamics, I have two coaching groups that are specific to complicated dynamics, Parent with Presence and Mindful Love, which is focused on marriages and intimate relationships. But I also have two long-term coaching groups where these things pop up in and out all the time. Transition Well is obviously around transitions, and that group is long-term ongoing coaching with a small group of people where we're exploring transitions. And transitions can be career transitions, but they're often sometimes also about parenting transitions, empty nesting, retiring, divorcing, remarrying, blending families. Like we have so many different points of transitions, and really all of life is a transition. So that is a beautiful group for anyone who identifies with this idea of going through a big transition, whatever it might be. There's no definition. And it's a beautiful way of finding some grounding and centeredness and connection along that journey. And so that group is going to start again in January 18th, and it runs for 5 months. We meet twice a month, and some people do one-on-one coaching alongside, and some people just do the group. And it is a beautiful self-care, compassion-filled meeting space for many people. So if you are identifying with that, and that would feel lovely, I would love to have you join us. You can reach out and email me and ask questions, or we'll put the link to that group in the show notes. The other group that I offer is called Ongoing Presence. And Ongoing Presence is for women physicians. It's again a small group. It's actually run as the same structure. Transition Well is an offshoot of it. We meet twice a month as a group, and some people do one-on-ones on the side. That's my recommendation of the most loving, kind, effective way to do it. And in that group, we coach on everything. So people are coaching on essentially figuring out how to live their lives in a way that's in alignment for them. And so people will get coached on sisters and mothers and partners and becoming new leaders and trying to figure out what they want to do about their job, or learning to enjoy the job they have, or figuring out how they might want to make a change. What I love about that group is we really coach on complicated dynamics in every part of your life. I've never identified it as that until we did this podcast. But it's really about how to make things less complicated and how to calm that snow globe. And again, the beauty of small group coaching, in my experience, I often get this question, like, should I do one-on-one or small group, is that you get to hear from other people. And sometimes when other people are exploring something, you realize what's in it for you. And interestingly, this whole idea, like I saw this word complicated dynamics words as an email, and it clarified everything that was going on for me and gave me this just sense of relief and ability to ground and settle and move on to what was next. And I see that for people in small group coaching, where someone will bring up something that they didn't even realize was what was going on for them. And so I think it's a beautiful spot for that. And if you're able to nourish yourself with some one-on-one personal attention, that's the best spot. But so I don't think there's a right or wrong, but I want to offer that there are opportunities to explore these experiences and dynamics and practices, and they're really fun.
If you enjoyed this podcast and found it helpful, please share widely and leave us some stars and reviews to help us spread the ripple effects of mindfulness. And Jessie and I hope that you have a healthy, happy, and safe upcoming holiday or not holiday season, depending on whether or not you celebrate these holidays coming up. Now and always, please stay on after the sound of the singing bowl for our mindful moment offering.
As always, if you want to declutter your mind, be more present, and start truly living your one wild and precious life, come find us at the mindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Work with one of us.
Work with both of us.
Start or uplevel your mindfulness practice.
Discover how mindful coaching can change your life.
Or even better, do both as part of our Mindful Healers programs and retreats. You can find links to find out more about our programs and join our communities at themindfulhealerspodcast.com.
Reach out and get started on your journey to a life better lived today.
The content of this podcast is not meant to be medical or life advice. If you choose to participate in our mindful moments, please do so safely. Welcome to this mindful moment offering. It's an invitation for you to send some loving kindness to your loved ones that are unconditionally loved. Inviting you to bring your hands atop your heart, pushing in gently, noticing the sensations of the hands atop the heart. And if it's safe for you to do so, inviting you to close your eyes or lower your gaze a few inches in front of you. Next, bringing to your mind's eye a loved one, someone that you've experienced unconditional love for, and sending loving and kind intentions to this loved one. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. Thanking this loved one for being part of this practice, letting them drift away from your awareness for now, and envisioning someone that causes some mild difficulty. Not the most difficult person in your life that you're encountering now, but someone that is causing some mild discomfort. Knowing that this person also is wishing for those same loving and kind intentions, and inviting you to send them those universal wishes of loving kindness. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. May you be well. May you find peace. May you be happy. May you be free from harm. And thanking this person for being part of this practice, keeping them in your awareness and bringing a loved one that you've experienced unconditional love with, together with this person who's caused some mild difficulty, and including yourself in this group, in this collective we, and sending this we some loving and kind intentions. May we be well. May we find peace. May we be happy. May we be free from harm. May we be well. May we find peace. May we be happy. May we be free from harm. May we be well. May we find peace. May we be happy. May we be free from harm. And thanking the others for being part of this practice, keeping yourself, the felt sensation of you in your mind's eye, and sending those same loving and kind intentions to yourself, because you too are deserving of those loving and kind intentions. May I be well. May I find peace. May I be happy. May I be free from harm. May I be well. May I find peace. May I be happy. May I be free from harm. May I be well. May I find peace. May I be happy. May I be free from harm. And thanking yourself for practicing, bringing your awareness back to the hands resting atop the heart, noticing the warmth and the pressure and the support that's there. It can be there for you unconditionally. And as you're ready, releasing your hands, letting them rest in your lap, blinking over your eyes, letting the light back in, taking a moment now to notice how you feel compared to just a few minutes ago. Thanks so much for practicing with me.